Hi everyone, it's Jill Foster here with another PB&J card class, and today's card is another holiday card featuring stamps and dies from Penny Black's newest collection, Season of Hope. And here is a look at the card that we will be creating today, and this features this beautiful wreath. I just love this wreath stamp. It is perfectly sized to fit on an A2 card, a 4¼ by 5½. Here's a look at what that set looks like. It's a cling stamp called Wreath and Wings. So you get the wreath and you also get those beautiful birds, which can be used with the wreath or on lots of other cards. Now I just wanted to mention before I begin that I will list all of the supplies at the end of the video, including the stamps, the dies, the inks, everything I'm using, the colors. So if you want to see that in more detail, just hit pause when it comes up on screen and you can check it out. So to begin, I'm stamping on Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. It's cold pressed using my Misty stamp positioning tool, which will allow me to get multiple impressions. I'm sort of stamping just like a base layer of this stamp using a light color of Memento Summer Sky ink. And I just like to have this base layer so I can see exactly what I'm working with, and it will just fill in any gaps if I don't get them inked perfectly. In this case, I also wanted to have this base layer because I wanted to paint some green, just a soft faded look of green around the oval of the wreath before I did any more stamping. So I'm coloring with an ARTEZA Everblend marker, which I will be using more to color directly on my stamp in a minute. And you can see here I'm just with a lot of water just painting that right over what I have stamped. And so by pre-stamping that with this Memento ink, it does not blend too much on this Canson watercolor paper. I can get this sort of light green around the wreath. I think it gives it just a little bit more thickness, a little bit more it's a little more substantial on the card when you have this sort of green going around the outer edges. And I want to concentrate that darker on the area where the wreath will be. So you will see I'll kind of pick up that paint on my brush and put it down on the wreath. Then I clean off my brush, swipe it on a paper towel, and then blend that out towards the edges. Now I want this to have a very loose watercolor artsy look, so I'm not worried about things looking perfectly, blending perfectly. I just want that to be a little bit darker on the wreath and faded out towards the edges and the center of the card. Now, once that was done, I'm ready to dry that, and then I'm using some of the Twi markers to color directly onto my stamp and then stamp that down. I'm just picking different shades of blue. I can also blend those out with some water and a paintbrush right after I stamp them. And again, I've been on a blue kick lately for some of my Christmas cards, so I'm kind of continuing that on this card as well. Now the Twi markers are a water-based marker, so you can blend with them. You can even put them onto your stamp and then mist your stamp with water, and that will give you a beautiful look too. Now I wanted these leaves to pop even more, and so I'm going to use some gouache paints, and I'm using them mostly just right out of the tube so I can put them on really thick, almost like an acrylic paint. And you'll see how this really brightens up some of these leaves. The gouache paint is more of an opaque paint than watercolor or those water-based markers I was using. So it's really fun to combine them. And because these leaves are so small, there's not a lot of detail in them. It's really quick to just paint right over the top and add just a little wash of that onto the leaves. And I'm just using a few different colors. I water it down a little bit so the color beneath will show, and it also makes it easy to apply, but not too much because I do really like that brightness that you get when it isn't watered down too much. So gouache is something you really will enjoy playing with, different consistencies with it, more water and less water right out of the tube versus re-wetting it. So you can see I have just a palette there where I keep my gouache paints in no organized fashion at all, but you can re-wet them so you don't you never waste any of what you squeeze out. You can just go back, open up that palette for another card, and use it then. And these are all by ARTEZA. So sorry off camera there, I'm just getting some more color, a little bit darker here. And I'm just echoing, if I stamped it in a darker color, then I am painting over it with a darker color. When I was stamping those, I was just looking for it to be a balanced look of lights and darks spread all the way around the wreath. And then I'm also just going, there you can see where I had a color that was already on my palette. I added water and I'm using that to paint in those berries. So just a very fun non-traditional color scheme. I will show you, if you stay tuned to the very end of the video, a more traditional color scheme with this stamp. So here I got a little bit adventurous, I guess you could say, and I am adding just a touch of green onto this, and I really love how that looks. It's just coming to life with some green there, and that goes with the background. Again, that's more of the gouache paint, and I can add it over the stamped areas, and I can add it over areas that already had gouache. Now this is the ARTEZA acrylic marker in white, and I'm adding just a few dots here. This will dry very light, but it does add some texture and some more design, especially if you get it over some of those painted areas. And I just wanted to add a bit of sparkle and excitement around the edges of the wreath. I'll also add some die cut stars at the very end, which I think echo that sort of movement around the edges. Now the panel is dry and I have added water to some titanium white gouache paint, and I'm just splattering that around the edges, trying to focus more on the wreath areas, but I am not too worried if it goes in the center or along the edges. I even grabbed some of that very light bluish gray color and am splattering that, and you can even just pick it right up, especially since it's still in that right out of the tube, and add some of those right where you want them, and they'll be nice and opaque because they aren't watered down. And I'm also going to get some green, splatter some of that. Again, just wanted this to have that joyful sort of look of movement around the wreath. So to finish this off, I have added our die cut Joy. This is the mirthful die cut, as well as stamped a sentiment in the center of the wreath from our Promise of Hope transparent set. And that finishes off the card. So in just a second here, I will show you a look at the finished card. Now, I did mention I would show you another card using a more traditional color scheme. This card does not use any painting at all, but it was stamped onto a smooth cardstock using different ink pads and markers. And you can see here what a different look you can get when you do that in more traditional colors. I thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, as well as our website and blog. And I will link to all of those for you down in the YouTube description box below. And stay tuned, I will have the full list of supplies up here on screen as promised.